Okay, good evening, everyone. I'll just, 30 seconds. Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our regular council meeting of Tuesday, May 24th. I do wish to begin by acknowledging that this meeting is being held on the traditional territory of the Sooke Nation. We're here today with gratitude. Okay, Council, our first order of business then is approval of tonight's agenda. Please note that there is also supplementary information that has come in for item 6.1. So we look for a motion then that the agenda for May 24th, 2022 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended with the inclusion of the supplemental info. Moved by Councillor Bateman and seconded by Councillor Beddoes. All those in favor, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to our first item, which is 6.1, which is the official community plan amendment bylaw for number, sorry, I need my glasses, number 7826588 Throup Road. So, did you need me for something?
You're opening for the public hearing?
Okay, so I'm going to read this statement. Okay. I'm used to doing it after the staff report, so bear with me here. Okay, so here we go. This public hearing is being held pursuant to the Local Government Act. At this public hearing, any person who believes that their interest in property is affected by the proposed bylaw will be given a reasonable opportunity to be heard or to present written submissions respecting matters contained in the bylaw that are the subject of this hearing. Copies of written submissions received to date are available. It is important that all who speak at this hearing restrict their remarks to matters contained in the bylaw, and it is my responsibility as chair of this hearing to ensure that all remarks are so restricted. For those of you who wish to speak, please at the appropriate time commence your address to council by clearly stating your name and municipality of residence. Then you may give us the benefit of your views concerning the proposed bylaw. Submissions must be received before or during the public hearing in order to be considered by council. Members of council may, if they so wish, ask questions of you following your presentation or submission. However, the main function of council members this evening is to listen to the views of the public. It is not the function of council at this public hearing to debate the merits of the proposed bylaw with individual citizens. Everyone who deems his or her interest in property to be affected shall be given the opportunity to be heard at this hearing. No one will be or should feel discouraged or prevented from making his or her views known. Please note that this hearing forms part of the regular meeting of council and as such is being video recorded. Videos and their contents, including any personal information disclosed during the public hearing, will be posted on the district's website. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff to take us through the report, please.
Thank you. All right, the applicant for this file has applied for an official community plan amendment to change the land use designation on 6588 Throup Road from agriculture to community residential. On behalf of the owner, the applicant has also requested to exclude the property, which is approximately 1.32 acre property from the agricultural land reserve. Under new provincial legislation regarding agricultural land exclusion, a local government is required to submit an exclusion application to the Agricultural Land Commission on behalf of a private owner. This ALR exclusion meets section 23, subsection 1 of the Agricultural Land Commission Act, and council on April 12, 2021 passed a resolution to support these types of exclusion application requests. The property is zoned large lot residential R1 and is an isolated agriculture designated property that is not near other active agricultural lands. Should the official community plan amendment and agricultural land reserve exclusion be approved, the owner of 6588 Throup Road can submit an application to rezone the property for low to medium density residential in the future. At that time, further site details such as riparian areas protection and detailed site assessments with development plans and other applicable reports will be submitted and evaluated during the rezoning process, in which a public hearing will also take place. The district had posted a ALR exclusion sign on the property. The official community plan amendment and the ALR exclusion is supported by staff for the following reasons. Community residential designation aligns with the official community plan regional context statement. The ALC has no concerns with the OCP amendment to change the land use designation to community residential. The property is exempt from the ALC regulations under section 23 subsection 1 of the Act. Property is not assessed as farmland, and the surrounding properties are within community residential designations. I believe with the supplemental information, the total number of letters received from the public were 3 for this file. And with that, staff are supporting a recommendation for the file to be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission for the exclusion and for third reading to be given to the official community plan following closure of the public hearing. That concludes staff's portion of the presentation. I'll also note that the applicants are in attendance here tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Paolo, thank you. I will look to see if there are any questions from members of council, and then we'll open up the microphone to the public, please. Any questions from members of council? Go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
I was hoping to confirm something that I thought I understood from previous meetings, and that's the relationship between moving forward on the transportation master plan and road improvements in that area, specifically connecting through Throup and this particular change to the OCP. I'd just like you could expand on that and explain exactly what the relationship between those things might be.
Certainly, in relation to the transportation piece with this is in the area of where the church roundabout would be located. So this would be a property adjacent to those lands. So as part of development of that area, the surrounding area would need to accommodate the necessary cross section for this area. So the roundabout would be a little bit larger in size. So going through a typical rezoning process, if this were to proceed to the rezoning stage, that's where land dedications and things like that are typically discussed amongst staff and the applicants. So that would be a consideration like any application. What are the frontage requirements and so on and so forth. So what we're addressing here right now is the understanding that for the applicant to proceed to the next stage for rezoning, because as I mentioned in the report and presentation, the community residential designation allows for the low to or higher medium density residential uses on the property. They would not be able to come forward with a rezoning application until this official community plan designation changed from agriculture to community residential. And we wouldn't only be able to do that if the ALC supported the agricultural land exclusion. So all of these pieces kind of fit together in a multi-phase approach leading up to the rezoning process. So the land dedication would be a part in future of providing for the ultimate build out of church and Throup Road through our transportation planning, long range planning.
So just to clarify, in order to get the access to the additional property that we would need to put in the roundabout, we would need for this property to be excluded by the ALC, for us to move to a rezoning, to work with the applicant to get access to that particular land, and then we could potentially put in the roundabout. Is that correct?
Those would be the steps in terms of, yes, getting to the rezoning stage where all amenities, necessary frontage improvements and the like would be provided through the development. We don't know exactly what the future development potential of that property is going to be, and the applicant would have to go through a successful rezoning application to achieve that. But in order to get to that stage, first the official community plan designation would have to be changed from agriculture to community residential, and that's what's brought this file here tonight. And then, yes, to accomplish those other items that you had mentioned with the road.
And does this facilitate the process, or is there some other way of actually accessing the property needed for the transportation for that connector? Like, is it possible to leave the land in the ALR and still work with the property owners, or is it really that we have to go this particular route?
This helps facilitate that process. With land exclusions, it's a cleaner process for addressing all of these matters. And given the fact that the ALR has or the ALC has provided a letter regarding the exception to this and indicated that they could support the exclusion or the community residential designation. These lead all up to those steps to make it a cleaner process for both the district, the province, and then ultimately the property owner, if successful, to go through a rezoning process and not have to be concerned with that ALR designation. It's my understanding in conversations with the ALC that this is a procedural matter based on their inventory of agricultural land. And they have specifically in the Act, this section 23 that identifies the parcels that are exceptions to the rule, that they can be excluded. But as a formality, they still have to go through the exclusion process. And that's what's been brought forward here tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Carter, you have something to add?
Yeah, through your worship, the council, I just wanted to note that dedications are usually taken at the time of rezoning, but the owners have been extremely cooperative and working with district staff and have worked towards providing all dedications that are required for the roundabout construction.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of council?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'm just referring to the supplemental agenda, and we have a letter here from Mrs. Phillips regarding her concerns about area drainage, that this particular piece of effective marshland is a key piece of drainage in the area. Have you had any thoughts on that?
Yes, as I mentioned in the presentation, the additional reports that would be submitted with a rezoning application would look into these matters and specifically how that would relate to the future plans for this property and how the site layout and any other development matters would have to take these drainage and any other riparian area requirements and the like into consideration before approval could be considered based on those technical reports.
And I'm not sure this is in the report, but has this piece of land ever been used as farmland, to your knowledge?
I'm not aware of that to my knowledge. I know there may be, in terms of past usage, casual of sorts, but in terms of a technical assessed value, as I mentioned, BC assessment doesn't recognize this as farmland either.
Anything else from members of council? Okay, so at this point, I would like to invite any members of the public here tonight that would like to speak on this public hearing, the OCP amendment bylaw for 6588 Throup Road. This is the only time in the agenda where you can speak on this particular item. If you're here to speak on any other item, just be patient and there will be another time available for you to speak on those items. This is strictly the public hearing for the bylaw in front of us. And you just need to come on over, grab a seat, turn on the microphone. And please just introduce yourself with your name and your municipality that you reside in.
Yes, Steve Unger, 6698 Helgeson Road here in Sooke. I voted for most of you. I voted so that you could protect trees, protect forests, and protect farmland. I did not vote for you to remove farmland, however small, for development. Housing and affordable housing are big issues, but the only solution to affordable housing cannot be cutting down trees and stripping farmland. There must be better ways. There are models all over the country, all over the world, of building affordable and other housing without stripping forests and farms. Housing has to go hand in hand with protecting nature. I voted for you to come up with creative, innovative solutions to low-income, affordable, and other housing, not to employ the status quo. You can do better. We can do better. Sooke can do better. Before you pass this amendment to the OCP, I implore you to direct staff to come up with more creative solutions, to come up with other ways. To solve the affordable housing problem does not require cutting down Sooke's forest or removing more land from the ALR. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Unger. Other speakers tonight?
Sinclair Phillip, 1911 Murray Road, Sooke. Some of you probably know, particularly people like Dana, that Councillor Lajeunesse, I mean, that we have had the biggest and largest removal of agricultural land of any municipal area in the province of British Columbia over the last 30 years. We have established a reputation of being anti-agricultural because there was money to be made in the sale of all those easy to build on lands. During the last elections, I did bring up the question at the Prestige Hotel of protection of agricultural land. And several of you promised before the elections that you would do what you could to preserve agricultural lands in Sooke. We are all aware of the fact that we are in the worst food crisis since 1917 during the First World War. And with climate predictions and drought across the world, this situation will only become worse. Forget the war in Ukraine. In places like the Cowichan Valley, where they have a reputation of wanting to promote agriculture and protect agricultural lands, any level of soil quality of agricultural land there is protected. And they do value that land, and they feel that even on the poorest of soils, you can build greenhouses, which may be the way of the future on Vancouver Island. 57% of greenhouse gas emissions on Vancouver Island are related to transportation. 28% of all greenhouse gas emissions on Vancouver Island are related to food transportation. That's extremely high because we don't produce much of our food anymore. In 1950, we produced close to 50% of our food. Now we produce less than 5%. So I believe, and several of you said that you believed, that we need to protect local agricultural land, and I believe that we should be buying local. We do have the opportunity right next door every Saturday. So for these reasons, and I realize I'm very time restricted, I could go on for a very long time. It's something I believe in. I would urge you, as a matter of principle, to preclude any further removals of the precious little agricultural land we have left in Sooke. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Philippe. Other speakers tonight?
Hi, so I know you have my letter and I
You
just.
could introduce
Oh,
yourself,
sorry.
please.
Anna Russell, Otter Point. I know you have my letter and I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I just wanted to say that for the past week for my fun and entertainment, I have been reading the OCP engagement summaries and all the appendices, every single word that the public has written in. I'm about halfway through, which is about 300 pages. And I grew up on the ALR and we were constantly fighting off development in the ALR. So that's a disclaimer about where I'm coming from, but I was honestly surprised at how many people were commenting on the OCP about their commitment to farmland, to agriculture, to it being local, to it being integrated into our communities, to having that land protected, to eating locally, growing locally. I was really surprised. And sometimes you could see in the comments, people were commenting on multiple subjects. So you could kind of get a sense of where they were politically, and it was across the spectrum. I was not expecting that. And so I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate, I know you have read this and looked at it longer than I have, but I just wanted to reiterate that that's what I was seeing in the OCP engagement. And I think it doesn't matter how small the land is, we need it all in BC. We are covered in mountains and trees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. Other speakers this evening?
Schaefer at 771 Hanbury Place in the Highlands. Good evening. As you know, I am Tanisha. I'm a planning consultant representing the owner this evening, and I wanted to reiterate Mr. Paolo's presentation. The subject property is currently designated agriculture in the OCP, but the ALC regulations do not apply as the property was under 2 acres in size on December 21st, 1972, and was a separate certificate of title under the land registry at that time. The district has adopted a policy to support lands that meet that criteria in exclusion applications to the ALC, and this property was not included in the agriculture plan inventory that Sooke has. In an earlier version of the OCP, the land was designated as community residential and zoned large lot residential R1, which stands today. When the current OCP bylaw came into effect, ground truthing was not used, and instead each property that was designated ALR was given the agricultural designation. The purpose of the proposed OCP amendment is to redesignate the property to community residential in order to enable a future zoning application. The property has not been used for agricultural activity and it is described as multifamily for BC assessment purposes. In addition, the property is located where the district is proposing a new roundabout. To facilitate that infrastructure improvement, the owner has agreed to dedicate approximately 705 square meters to the district, making the new property size about 1.1 acres. As noted in the staff report, this property is in an ideal location for infill development for low to medium density multifamily housing. As the surrounding land uses are compatible, the site is on a transportation corridor, and this neighborhood is within a 10-minute walk of the town center. Ground-oriented housing is one of the most needed types of housing in Sooke, as outlined in the Housing Needs Report. What's before you tonight is a decision about the land use designation and ALR exclusion, a zoning proposal with details pertaining to the environment, including water bodies and vegetation, site surfacing, and other relevant matters will come before council at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Everts. Other speakers this evening? So I will call for a second time. Second time for any speakers. This is the only time available on tonight's agenda for this particular item. So once the public hearing closes, we cannot receive any written submissions, emails, messages, phone calls, correspondence of any sort. So I'm going to call now for a third and final time to speak on this item. This is the official community plan amendment bylaw 782-6588 Throup Road. This is the third call and final call for any further public commentary. Okay, so on that note, I will now officially close the public hearing. And so thank you all those that have spoken, as well as those who have submitted the written submissions. We are now unable to receive any further commentary from members of the public. So I will turn the matter back to council. We've heard from the public. You received your agenda package. We've done first and second reading. So what is in front of us today for the recommendation then is that council, one, forward the agricultural land reserve exclusion for 6588 Throup Road to the Agricultural Land Commission with a recommendation of support. And two, give third reading to official community plan bylaw number 782-400-16-2022. Is anyone wanting to move that recommendation? Councillor Logans is moving it and seconded by Councillor Bateman. Councillor Logans, do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I think this lot, I understand where the public is coming from in terms of keeping it ALR. But I do think that this piece is kind of a missing piece of the puzzle that we need for a transportation corridor. Again, that comes with all other issues as well, working on transportation rather than building our food sources that are local. But in this balance, I do see it more valuable moving forward, as we have made the motion just now. I would like to thank Ms. Everts for some of the background information, and also thank the others for their thoughts on our green spaces and ALR spaces. And hopefully urge those folks to continue pushing for those spaces in our community, because this may not have been the right fight, but there are others that we desperately need you for. So please keep coming out and making those comments. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Bateman is a seconder.
Yeah. So I was extremely hesitant to second that, but as Councillor Logans has said, it makes sense. This is the first time Sooke has removed ALR or recommended the removal of ALR since 2006. Okay, and Mr. Phillips is correct in that, Mr. Phillip is correct, excuse me, in that Sooke had an extremely bad reputation, and those first 7 years as a municipality, left, right, and center, ALR was being removed. I did campaign on the development and evolution of the Sooke food shed, as we called it back in the transition Sooke days. And at the same time, I also campaigned for smart growth in our town center. So here we have a situation with a key transportation corridor that will, we're in this really complicated moment here in Sooke's evolution. We have so much traffic on the road. I came back from Victoria today from the dentist, and from Glynns Lake Road to the town center, I counted 219 cars over a 15-minute period from noon to 12:15 on the Sooke Road heading east. And I think everyone here recognizes that things have changed very dramatically. So this connector route, which this council is very committed to getting built through the, identified in the transportation master plan, this is a key piece of that. I'm really sorry to see a piece of green space in our town center, a carbon sequestering piece of property right next door to Wadham's Farm, which of course has been, is under development. And all I can say is that at the same time, the OCP, which we are in the process of reviewing and will continue to review in a couple of weeks, you have a look at the very robust agriculture and food systems policies and actions. You can also look in July at the climate action plan and its very strong food security and commitments. Our commitment to the CRD's Regional Foodland Trust. So I think we are doing some right things at the same time, recognizing we have a town center. We're building a 10-minute densification in the town center, walkability, and this is right in the a key piece of that story. So on those grounds, I have seconded this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beddoes, then St. Pierre.
Yeah, I certainly hear the concern. I would not see agricultural land, but according to the Agricultural Land Commission, this is exempt anyways and hasn't been used for farming. I suspect it could be again. But on the other issue of being involved in the present OCP that is not passed yet, but we're dealing with the old OCP. We made a concerted effort that we were going to densify in the town center. And part of the reason for that was the input from the public saying is that, yes, we do need more housing, but we want to do it in density in the downtown core, which just a lot is, and take the pressure off the more rural areas and the more agricultural land in the outlying acreage. So it was a density issue, more so than it was a traffic issue. So it is in the downtown area within walking distance of all the stores and what we were looking for housing. And that is another one of our big mandates. It's unfortunate that we have to allow for this, but that was the trade-off. And unfortunately, sometimes that's what we have to deal with here, is a trade-off for the greater good. And I think the greater good is to proceed with this and carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre.
The transportation corridor is needed. It's needed to reduce our emissions. It's needed to improve our transportation efficiency. There's no doubt about that. The density is needed. There's no doubt about that, so that we can actually make use of active transportation, get more local economic development, so on and so forth. Completely agree with that. My one concern in all of this is that there's absolutely no guarantee that we won't end up with single family detached on that lot, which would be just the worst thing in the world as far as I'm concerned. It's the preferred form of development because it's easy, it's cheap, and we know there's a market for it. I don't know that we have any guarantees that we'll have affordable housing or multifamily, that will have desperately needed retail, that will be making use of this transportation corridor with that amazing size lot to do the kind of development that would actually allow us to reduce the carbon footprint of the outlying suburbs by actually providing amenities. I'm concerned about simply taking it from ALR to community residential, because community residential to me just means single family detached. I agree that in terms of farming, at that size, I mean, you can farm on anything. So it's not necessarily as wonderful as, you know, larger properties and so on and so forth. And given that the ALC within the section 23 is willing to go, that's not really as big a concern. I do think that it's important to protect our agricultural land, but I think it's also important to make sure that we have a way to get out of cars and a way to actually have a local economy that works and a way to have transportation networks that allow us to get out of cars. So these are all important things. At this point in time, I will stand opposed simply as a warning that I do not want to see single family detached. I can see where this is going, but I don't want to see that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I just, that transportation corridor is vital to Sooke, as we all know. Anyone who's sat in traffic for an hour to try and get from Langford to Sooke over the last few months. And so between that and, as Councillor Beddoes pointed out, the need for densification in the town center, I will support this.
Okay, thank you. I don't have much to add. I will support the resolution. This piece of property does sit on a transit line with more transit being planned to service movement in and around Sooke, which has been limited to date. But those are plans coming out of the Transit Commission. It is also walkable, as many folks that live a greater distance from here walk down to Sooke Road to catch the 61 every day. It's within 3 schools, 2 elementary schools and 1 middle school. And actually probably walkable or rideable to EMCS, as we see many students who live further already doing so. It's walkable to the town center. In terms of what is needed in the future to recognizing Councillor St. Pierre's concern, I do agree, we do need more density in this particular area than just single family units. However, I'm trusting that the applicant being present today says a lot, because they aren't always present at public hearings. Aware of our housing needs report as mentioned, and also we are going through an OCP process where our planning staff will hopefully give some good advice in terms of the housing needs that our community desperately needs. We have folks living in very unsafe and unstable areas, and in other cases they're fine but can't move. The rental stock cannot be freed up for movement because of the price of housing. So hopefully with more affordable or attainable product coming onto the market, we could see a shift where folks that are renting can actually have home ownership and start to build up equity. And those rental units will be available for others who desperately need rentals to move into. Traffic is a problem when charters, even though it's open to single lane, but when it was shut fully, we see just how clogged every road in Sooke cuts. It's not just the highway that's busy, it's all of our arterial roads. This corner is not safe to cross. Walking with school children who went from Sooke Elementary all the way into the Stickleback corridor in this particular stretch, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to cross because the visibility is low. And because there were packs of students, I noticed that traffic slowed down tremendously, but it's a challenging area there. And you can see just by the bollards that have, or the pickets or whatever they are, stanchions, the posts have been broken, probably from vehicles coming too close or too around. So we need to get on with making this area safer so that active transportation, and you see the work that we're doing to improve active transportation and what our ultimate build out will look like in the years to come, can continue to happen. This will help move people freely about Sooke. And this council has done a lot to do our best to promote green space, but also to promote the active transportation, to pursue those grants so we can lessen our dependence on vehicles and get out on trails safely, which we're seeing. We're seeing walking school buses appear in Sooke for the first time ever. I think that's something we should be proud of. So I'll leave it at that and thank everyone for their participation tonight. So I'll check again, councilors, any second or final comments from anyone before I call the question? See none? Okay, I'll call the question then. All those in favor and opposed? Councillor St. Pierre is opposed. The motion carries. Okay, so that completes that particular item. We'll move on to item 7, which is adoption of minutes. So we have meeting minutes from April 27th special council meeting, May 2nd special council meeting, May 9th regular council meeting, all here to be adopted as a block is circulated. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre and seconded by Councillor Logans. Any questions or corrections? Councillor Bateman.
Just a couple of minor ones. On page 3 of the April 27th special council meeting under Capital Bike, the programming would occur at Sooke Elementary, not at Poirier and Cecinos. And no, they had done that in previous years. So this year was to be Sooke Elementary. I think, I hope, but you'll check. And also on page 2 of 6 for that same meeting, item 5.3, you say the grant, if awarded, would fund less than 10% of SFRS's total budget related to this particular prenatal program, just for clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bateman. So the minutes will be amended accordingly. So I'll call the question on adoption. All those in favor? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, our next item is our delegation section. And our first one up, program and events update from the Sooke Region Community Health Network, SEARCHN. We have a presentation tonight by Ms. Christine Bossy.
So, good evening. I'm sorry, I have some allergies, so I do apologize. Volunteerism. Now, this has come up in your meeting, so I thought it's about time that Sooke Region Community Health Network with their volunteer centers should probably give an update on the volunteer situation, which I'm sure you're wanting to learn more about. And also, I'll just give a very brief overview, and then I will be open to questions, which I'm sure you have. So, yeah. I'm not expecting you to read all of that, but that is just to give an impression of how many organizations there are. That was pre-COVID, before the pandemic, quite a lot, 145, in fact, covering different aspects and sectors, mostly around safety, health, and social issues, but also very much around sports and outdoor, not so surprisingly. So again, lots of charities, societies that can bring money in to support programs to support people in our community to make it a better place to live. So volunteer trends during COVID and post-COVID. Obviously during COVID, there was a fear of meeting in person. A great big piece of volunteering is to be with your community members, and that was not possible during the pandemic. Some organizations closing doors due to lack of funding, human resources, and lack of ability to pivot, resulting in important services not being delivered. So we noticed, for example, there were a lot of executive directors that left organizations. They stayed for 1 year in the pandemic, but after the second year saying, no way, we want to retire, we're not staying. And then often coordination staff had to move up to more superior functions, and there was a gap in finding senior management. There were also organizations that, like literacy organizations in the province, they closed their doors because they could not pivot. They were so reliant on the traditional tutoring methods and couldn't go online, for example. So unless you were able to pivot as an organization, in certain cases, it was very difficult to continue. Now we're seeing post-COVID, I put in, because we're not really out of it yet. People are feeling the need to connect with other human beings. There's still some reticence, obviously. But again, there are options to volunteer online, but it doesn't have that same impact as being in person. People still need to have that feel-good sentiment that volunteerism provides. And I think also with the newer generations, there are new types of demands on what volunteerism looks like. So the traditional one of serving tea and coffee will not, for maybe the older generation would not work so well for the younger generation. Okay. So some suggestions on our side. Well, thanks to your discussions, actually, there are people coming and asking for volunteer opportunities. So thank you for raising that. It was very good marketing for us. But now we're thinking of having an event June 22nd, presently for the Sooke Library, unless there's more people coming than 40 people, a nonprofit think tank. So basically I'm going to invite everybody on that list that I had earlier, and to see where we are, get a lay of the land, who is still operating, who is not, who is running these operations now. It's probably changed a lot since then, and to get a baseline effect on that. And then I thought next would be, a lot of ones, volunteer fair. So we would have a separate event where nonprofits wanting volunteers can have booths, and also have, we can also do volunteer recruitment and also a volunteer appreciation event, I think, in addition to that. And lastly, it was mentioned over at the Community Economic Development Committee, Councillor La Jeunesse made a very good comment that why don't we have a nonprofit for-profit meeting of the minds. So I think with the first nonprofit think tank session, where we can see where we are on the nonprofit side, then gather together with the for-profits and then have a broader discussion to follow exactly now with this OCP. Will probably be ratified by then, because this will not happen until the fall in any case. And then let's see where we can move forward together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bossy, for joining with us tonight. We did start to get a sense of the lay of the land through the community grant deliberations, and it just gave insight into the funding challenges. It was events that lead to fundraising abilities, and some events work very well, or as well as they can in a virtual setting, and others it's just impossible, right? So I really appreciate just how you've recognized that was also very obvious in what we were hearing too. So yeah, please send out that invitation. It'll be good to just get something in the calendar that we know the date, obviously, but just the time once you have that confirmed. Or do you have that yet?
From 1 to 4.
1 to 4, perfect. Thank you for answering
so that. Yeah, it might change to a bigger location if we get more, but you'll find out well in time.
You're getting the RSVP, you're asking for RSVPs to plan.
Yes, I am.
Okay. The only challenge is if you're looking for a backup space, you may want to get in and figure out what that is, because we're learning that space and availability of space is not easy right now.
Yes, I think I'm going to the community hall actually. So
Okay.
This was just a tentative.
Good, excellent. Okay, questions, Councillor St. Pierre?
Just a few questions. Curious about, Council was looking at some sort of volunteer recognition in 3.1s. There wasn't was there something specific on volunteer recognition, or are we just really trying to get the lay of the land and all the rest at this point, trying to reconstitute as opposed to recognize?
Yeah, on my second point one, I said
Second point.
there was a appreciation, volunteer appreciation, recognition, if you want to say it that way. I would put it as the same.
And what would be the scope of that?
That can be discussed. I think that was something I thought we could mention at the first point one, where the nonprofits are meeting. So that would be something that what was because that's always a challenge, isn't it? Volunteers are very different. So what is recognition? Some like a big plaque and or diploma, and others prefer nothing. So, you know, trying to find that balance between everything, but having a possibility to have that combined with the fair, I think would be a good opportunity. But then maybe the outcome in that first point one would be different. So.
Okay. And the third point one, what are your hopes in terms of getting the for-profits and the nonprofits? I assume that you're at least got a hope there. And I'm curious what it might be because it sounds exciting, but I'm not sure what it would look like.
Well, you know, up until now, I've been facilitating chairing the Community Economic Development Committee. So it's with great enthusiasm where the nonprofit community is interacting with, you know, the big thinkers also with the for-profit in our community, which has really been an exciting situation. And we are finding, I think that possibility is very likely because there is that willingness to do that, to have that collaboration, to work together, to find ways that this would, you know, where do we place ourselves, but how can we do this together so that we can move forward in a positive direction? So I do believe it's not going to be that difficult.
Thank you. Other questions? Councillor Bain.
Yeah, so a bit of a statement before the question. Okay, because this is a delegation, I can do that. So at the Age Friendly Committee, which I sit on, a council appointee, and Christine is the as executive director of search, and she's on that committee. And so I reported out on our March 28th meeting, whereby we resolved to fund a volunteer recognition event for our committee volunteers in, I think, later July in the amount of $5,500. And at our Age Friendly Committee meeting, I think I raised the thought that council contingency might be tapped for a community volunteer recognition event. And Christine told us that International Volunteer Day this year is December 5th. So I'm wondering whether you might be prepared to go away and work on these three while keeping in mind a community volunteer recognition day in December and come to us and seek some funding to make that happen.
More than willingly.
Okay.
Anything else? No. Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, I really like the idea of a volunteer fair. I'm sure all the groups that you've dealt with, well, you haven't contacted them all, but I could speak for one that I belong to. Through COVID, we lost 9 members for various reasons. And we have not been able to replenish those 9 members because of COVID. Hopefully now that we can. So I think a job or a volunteer fair would be a good idea that the different service clubs, the different groups that are looking for people can say, look, this is what we do. And you know, if you want to volunteer. And a lot of people in this community, it is a volunteer community, just need to be that contact person. So I encourage you to do that. Maybe that's what you could do in that December 5th time. So we'll sort of support you. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Just one final comment. Thank you for that, Councillor Beddoes, is the Chamber of Commerce has restarted the Newcomers Club and is working with Meanwhile and Sooke to promote that. We have, even during COVID, a lot of folks did move here and are wanting to get to know the community and find ways to get involved. And so they just need to be kind of notified. So while you are reaching out to the groups that have already a presence here, you may just want to check in with the chamber and perhaps float something out to the Newcomers Club there as well, because there could be others that are forming something or just looking for a way to engage.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time with us today. And as always, thank you for the work you're doing, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Okay, Council, our next item up is 8.2, which is a quarterly update with our fire chief. Over to Chief Ryder, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Well, I guess we'll start off just with a bit of a brief summary. So I've been here just over 6 months at this current time. I'm settling in a bit and starting to gather an understanding of the operational model that they use here in Sooke at the fire department. I've been looking closer at workloads and roles and responsibilities, further studying them with the hope of identifying gaps and recognizing efficiencies. We've created a new daily station operation guide with the goal of focusing on our immediate priority, which is having response-ready firefighters.
Once I'm satisfied with this outcome, the other pieces will fall into place. Our goal is to respect the history and tradition, but at the same time, start to embrace change. So the total calls for this quarter, around 177 incident responses, and a lot of those were medical responses. As you're aware, we did take on a new full-time employee. We posted internally and externally with lots of interest from abroad. The successful candidate, as I think most of you know, was a Sooke paid on-call firefighter. So what that really means in the big picture is it really shows that our training program within the paid on-call ranks is quite effective and good. So we're recruiting our own staff, which is nice. New recruits, we will be taking on 5 new recruits. They're going to complete their training the end of this month. And that brings our paid on-call staff up to a total number of 32. We're going to start focusing on a recruitment drive. It'll start soon with the goal to target getting new folks at our Station 2 facility. As you're aware, the master fire plan is almost complete. We'll be bringing that to council on June 20th, where Mitchell and Associates will be presenting. It's a really detailed document, lots of reading, lots of good information, and the hope is that that will become our roadmap to the future. Our station renovation, as you're aware, is on track. There's some small supply issues that sort of hamper progress moving forward, but nothing too serious. The bathrooms, as most of you are aware, are 90% completed. We've adjusted to our new digs, our little office outside there, and it hasn't really had any major impact on our normal day-to-day operations, so that's great. And I just want to recognize the project team that's been managing this whole renovation. Things are working out really well, and they've done a great job thus far. Fire Smart, our coordinator and myself ventured off to Kamloops there a week or so ago to sit in on the Fire Smart BC conference. It was a great opportunity. Our coordinator has also done 6 public events throughout this month. She's been able to achieve 12 home assessments. Some of the challenges we see here in this particular area of the island is the fact that people don't realize that we are at the threat of fire. It's not, the rainforest doesn't stop us from being at threat. So those things are interesting. And I think if we get out there and have more of a presence in the community, we can start to educate and get people to understand that. We need to get buy-in to be successful. And it's a work in progress, and it will happen in time. They're predicting another warm, dry summer. Not that we wanted to hear that, but that's just what's the predictions are at this point in time. And just a little note here that the BC Wildfire have responded to 105 fires already this year, which is staggering, really. Emergency management. We've been working on some cross-jurisdictional evacuation planning, tsunami mapping. Our emergency program coordinator is reaching out to district staff and providing training opportunities. Our emergency social support team is going strong. They're meeting tonight, actually, and we're holding steady at 24 members, and they're all glad to be back to face-to-face meetings. Emergency management, just for your information, is one of the areas in fire services that demands a lot of time. And as we move forward with climate change and all the things we're presented with, it's just going to keep taking more time and resources. So it's a significant draw on our department. Getting ready to sit down with the International Association of Firefighters and do some collective bargaining. That will happen probably in the next month or so, once we get our mandate from council. I've been doing a little bit of work with the CRD in regards to our dispatch provider. And when we changed from Langford to Saanich, we lost the ability to have a records management system. So the CRD is now working to try and get to that point and get our record management system back online for us so we can track all our calls and stats. And I can come to you like today, for example, and provide you with some really good data and charts and graphs and what have you. So hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have that in place. In regards to our department and the community, we've been participating in community events. Station tours are starting to be scheduled, which is nice to see again because COVID obviously hampered that. Our inspection schedule is being rolled out for our crews so they can start doing business inspections. As you are aware, our community is changing. It's growing rapidly. We're going to be dealing with mid-rise buildings, lots of construction going on. And what that means for us is we need to change the way we fight fires. So suppression skills and training will be on the forefront. Our responses are changing and not in a real positive way. We're responding to a lot of nasty things, as you're aware in the news, the stabbings, shootings, and lots of overdoses. These responses have an impact on our staff and their mental health. We have an internal critical incident stress management team. They're busy managing these events, working with our staff that are presented with these unfortunate responses. But my question or my comment today is at what point do they become overwhelmed, and how are we going to deal with that as we move forward? So anyway, that's my report. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Questions from members of council? Councillor St. Pierre.
Actually, it's, I guess it's less of a question than a comment. And I'd like to just say thank you, actually, because one of my kids actually passed out today and smacked his head hard. And your people were there within, I think, 3 to 5 minutes. Excellent.
Other questions or comments? Questions? No, on behalf. Okay.
Why not? So through you to the chief, your Fire Smart coordinator, her contract ends, I think, roughly midsummer. Do you have an opportunity to keep that position? I may have asked this before, but I'm asking again.
And I'll answer again. So yes, it does expire the latter part of this year because she started a little bit later. And then we were successful with another grant application, as you're aware of, so that will keep her going for another year. So we're thankful for that.
Thank you, Chief. I just, with that, as the coordinator is getting out into the community, I think any way to share what is, either some teachable moments or what has been learned from the resident, if they're comfortable, it doesn't have to be them tweeting, but just, hey, I didn't know this, about whatever. That information, I think, would be very valuable. It may also help more folks get interested in it, but if they can't, at least they're going to be learning from that experience that others may be having, because there could be similar scenarios. So rather than waiting for the coordinator, there could just be, okay, well, I didn't know about that. I should do that at my house too. And I think all of those efforts collectively will make a difference in the long run.
Yeah, I would agree. At the conference, the big message there was 50% of this initiative is education. So it's all about getting out there and spreading the good word, so to speak. So thank you for that.
And I'm also glad that the station is open for tours. So Sooke Elementary, I think, is coming in early June.
Mhm.
So I'm looking forward to that, actually, because it's nice to have the students back in the municipal hall, both learning from your side, but also it's an opportunity for me to share what council does and what our role in community is as well. But it's the fire department that's always more the draw than municipal chambers, unfortunately. But maybe we'll see that shift over time, but grateful for that. And also thank you for the work that both you and the complement are doing. I think many signed up to help and to volunteer and to contribute, but the shooting, stabbings, and the mental health piece is something most don't sign up for, but we're very grateful that they're there. And building on what Councillor St. Pierre said, anytime my family has had an incident, the fire department is the first to arrive. So it just provides comfort for those at home. So I know you're doing challenging work with the medical calls, but very grateful for it at the same time. And I witnessed the fire on Church Road. It was terrifying. I didn't like it. I was pacing and running from it and drawn to it and running from it and drawn back to it. And it was just when you see the crew come and just their relaxed approach to it while everyone else is freaking out. We're just very grateful for that as well. Just the confidence and the delivery. It puts everyone at ease, because clearly I'm not the right fit for that. I don't like fire at all. So thank you. And you did say warm and dry. I think some of us are hoping for some more heat, but maybe you can work on that in your spare time.
Yeah.
Keep it safe.
Thank you.
Okay, council, thank you very much, Chief. We'll move on into our next section here, which is our report of the Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Schaefer.
There's nothing this evening, Your Worship, but I'm happy to answer questions if council has any.
Questions for Mr. Schaefer? No, thank you for being here tonight. Okay, public question and comment period. So for those of you that are in the gallery, we do have this section now on our agenda for any item you can speak to except for the public hearing that is closed. So for items of correspondence or some of the other matters that are here in front of us, we'd like to invite you to come forward. Please introduce yourself. We need your name, the municipality that you live in. If you can let us know which item you're speaking to, that'll be great. And you have 2 minutes. Welcome, and please just turn on the microphone.
Awesome, thank you. I'm Finn Unger. I'm from 6698 Helgeson Road in Sooke.
And I'm Vincent MacJass from 2436 Otter Point Road.
We are here tonight on behalf of the Sooke Sailing Association to ask for your support.
Both of us go to EMCS. I'm a Sea Cadet and my friend Finn here is part of leadership at EMCS. We both joined Sooke Sailing within the last 2 to 3 years. Like so many of our age groups. We need outlets and purpose of ways to deal with COVID. So we were able to do Sooke Sailing. And from that, we were able to do competitions and it really helped us.
We're here tonight to tell you that 2 weeks ago, we actually qualified for the BC Summer Games this July in Prince George. This is the first time that a Sooke crew has ever been represented at the BC Summer Games. Most of the time it's the crews from the bigger, kind of more established clubs like the Royal Victoria Yacht Club.
But not this time because Sooke Sailing might not be a fancy club. We're furnished and our home base is like a trailer.
A shipping container?
Yeah. And gravel park lot and by the shipyard on West Coast Road by Alec Beach. But that doesn't stop us. We train in the rain or shine.
Definitely all different types of winds. We work hard and are persistent, and we are always up for an adventure. If you remember the tornado a few months ago that crossed Vancouver and across English Bay, we were out there that day racing on the water in what we thought were normal but strong winds. And we came in third that day in the race. And 2 weeks ago at the races in Victoria, the winds were gusting up to 75 kilometers an hour. We've capsized 5 times, but we righted ourselves 5 times and kept on going. We were very wet and cold, but we wanted to finish. We wanted to qualify for the Summer Games. There were 14 boats in the race that day. Only 3 finished, and we were one of them. And that was the day that we qualified for the games this July.
We are very proud to finish, and we finished in a very Sooke way. We kept on going, and especially him, he found the water, and he kept going. So he was really cold too. So I'm surprised he kept going. And we are honored to represent Sooke, and it turns out the whole lower Vancouver Island at the Summer Games.
But like everything these days, it's going to be a bit expensive. So that's why we're asking the District of Sooke for $10,000 in funding to get us to Prince George, to help us be the best we can, and afterwards to help us grow the amazingness of the Sooke Sailing Association. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. So it was Mr. Finn Unger, and your name was again?
Vincent MacJash.
Vincent MacJash?
Yeah.
Well, congratulations to both of you. We received the correspondence and wanted to give a shout out, but we weren't aware of who it was because you were underage. So just very proud of you and well done. I think that's really exciting because you have the opportunity going forward. We may even see you in the Olympics one day, and that's super exciting, but good for you.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
Thank you.
And really appreciate the time that you're here tonight to address council on this item, not only to share the success you have, but you're a mentor to many other the next generation that's following you. So well done. That's just great. Okay, other members of the public here to speak on tonight's agenda. This is the only time for all remaining items. So anyone have anything? Any comments? Last and final time? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for being here anyway. Okay, so on that note, we'll move on into our consent agenda. And the recommendation is that item 11.1 be adopted by general consent. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. And that's unanimous. Thank you. Item 12 is our Land Use and Development Committee recommendation. Public engagement regarding John Phillips Memorial Park. Councillor Bate, you might just want to speak in the mic.
Yes, your worship, I've declared a conflict of interest because I'm a Sooke Line member, so I will recuse myself from this.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. We will find you out there. Councillor Logans?
Can I declare a bathroom of interest?
How about we take a short health break and then that's probably a good idea. So it's currently, what time is it right now? 8:10, so we'll be back in 8:15, 8:20, 5 minutes, good? 5 minutes. We have washrooms open on this floor now, so I think we can go with 5. Okay, folks, it's 8:15. 8:15. Councillor St. Pierre, take a seat. We have a conflict. He's out of the room. Okay, so item 12.1 and over to staff, please.
Thank you. So this recommendation arises from the Land Use and Development Committee. Previously, in April, the committee met and discussed John Phillips Memorial Park in general, just kind of the history behind it. And then from a motion back in September of last year, council had directed staff to bring back a report containing the lease details, development permit process, and options for further engagement. So the committee focused on the engagement aspect of that motion of council and just discussed a number of items as to how the district could move forward with overall parks planning for John Phillips. During that discussion, a motion was put forward by Councillor St. Pierre, which read that the committee recommend council consider a charrette leading to a master plan for the context of public engagement for the lease of a portion of John Phillips Memorial Park to Sooke Lions. So that was discussed and supported by the committee. Following that, staff have reviewed the Parks and Trails master plan and as well considered for council's consideration a motion as well that council directs staff to consider development of a master plan for John Phillips Memorial Park as identified in the Parks and Trails master plan. So both motions for council to consider, just considering work plans to be developed moving forward into the next year, and in relation to addressing the short-term objectives of the Parks and Trails master plan, which in fact a master plan for John Phillips is identified as a short-term action item out of the PTMP. So with that, I'll leave it with council for consideration of those motions.
Thank you, Mr. Paolo. Just a question I have is at this meeting, were the Lions involved or did they participate in this conversation?
No, this is specifically related to staff's involvement with the engagement aspect of John Phillips Memorial Park. And so it was specifically the Parks Department providing a presentation to the Land Use and Development Committee to just provide some feedback on how this engagement could look with staff participating as part of that. So we wanted to kind of broaden that based on the staff motion that was put forward, looking at more the park in its entirety. And that was stemming from the Parks and Trails master plan and really addressing action items arising out of our already adopted and accepted master plan, which staff feel would address that motion back from September of last year. But this would accomplish a much larger scale item, which comes from that Parks and Trails master plan.
Okay, and just as a follow-up though, we had received emails from staff about some tentative dates where we were going to have our open house or community open house for this. I'm not aware, where are we at with that now?
Last communication I saw was that there was scheduling challenges just with all parties to try and be available and at the same time find accommodations to book and reserve the space to host. So I think at this point now, it looks like scheduling throughout the summer wasn't going to be possible. And this is likely looking at dates closer to the fall, I believe, but nothing has been secured as of yet, as far as I'm aware of.
Okay. I appreciate how this has come about. I just feel that the Lions may not be aware of this. And so they're waiting on us to host an open house. And now we're doing, potentially may do something entirely different. So I'm a bit stuck there when they're waiting on us to have a date, but now we're looking at doing something else. And they haven't even, are they even aware that this is in front of us and something that we're considering?
It was my understanding that the Sooke Lions Club were hosting that event and staff were participating as owners of the park, being that it was district land, but the open house was the objective of the Lions Club hosting, not so much for staff or the district hosting the open house. We were just participants explaining and being available to discuss those items of the development permit process and just overall the engagement aspect of the information that we could share. The Sooke Lions Club would discuss their proposal with the public. We would be there as a resource explaining the district side of how we would be potentially involved in that process if it were to move forward. And so what we're suggesting now at this point is for part of our overall work planning process with the Parks and Trails Master Plan, we saw an opportunity to address the park in its entirety, which could address this piece as well.
So where does the open house fit into this though? Because that's where we got emails, how about this date or this date, and then nothing, and now there's nothing planned at all. So I just don't, I'm just trying to follow the order of operations, and it just goes dark and I don't see it. And now we're going to do all this work instead, which still to have a charrette, if space is a challenge, you won't find anything until September, right in the middle of an election. So it just pushes everything out. And I get that that's reality. We're running out of time. But we're just introducing something that we haven't. Yeah, anyway, I'll leave it and we'll just get other pieces. I just don't see where the open house fits in now. It feels like it's disappearing completely. Councillor St. Pierre?
I just wanted to speak about deliberations that happen within Land Use Committee in terms of this particular item. We actually have a really good, I think, cross-section of the community. We don't necessarily have a lot of people of color, and that's unfortunate. And I don't think we have anyone quite under the age of 30. Possibly have one, but nonetheless, we have a pretty good cross-section. And I was actually surprised that almost everyone on the committee had reservations about a lease to essentially what they consider to be a private club. There was the sense that, for example, I think that the open house might be premature, depending on what the objectives of the open house are, before there's a sense of what the park wants to have happen in it, to basically confirm the previous engagement that happened many years ago in, I think, 2006, no, 2006. But basically to confirm some of that stuff, but also to, have another iteration to figure out what you want to do. There were questions, for example, about if you're going to put a building there, what should that building be used for? And I know that the Lions have been very open about what could go in there, but what should go there is, really something that could come out of a charrette, not a master plan for the park, what activities are going to happen within the park. Because a building would, if we put a building, if the community wants a building, would anchor those activities. We shouldn't necessarily be just, making that up as we go along. I guess I was really looking at the language here. The council consider a charrette leading to a master plan. Absolutely. For the context, I wasn't sure. I just wanted to ask Mr. Paulo, for the context of public engagement for the lease of a portion of John Phillips Memorial to the Sooke Lions, what's meant by for the context of public engagement with the rest of this?
That was the motion that was put forward by the committee. So that was the original one that the committee had crafted during the meeting and passed as the motion. Do we have the other motion that staff had prepared? We had put this one forward for consideration from council tonight, just to address the fact that we have identified in our Parks and Trails master plan the action item to develop a master plan. So with that, I can read that portion where it states that prepare a park master plan with full community engagement for the parks with the highest needs and potential as follows. John Phillips Memorial Park is a short-term item, so that's the 0 to 5 year range to develop that, and the district being the responsible party to lead that. So engagement would be incorporated as part of that development, but this kind of just ties more together with fulfilling the action items out of our Parks and Trails master plan.
I think that the charrette was meant, if I remember right, the charrette was meant to provide context for the type of building. So basically providing information in terms of what usages might be appropriate. If, first of all, if the building was wanted, what type of building might be acceptable, all of those different elements. I think that was the context we were talking about. So basically having a shred to inform on all of those things. Is that your recollection as well? Is that?
I believe the discussion around the committee table is that the charrette would help inform the process as an engagement tool to see how John Phillips Memorial Park would be developed, and knowing already interest of the Sooke Lions Club to propose development in there, that would likely be taken into consideration from the public as well. As how does that get incorporated into the charrette development with the public participating?
Okay. I don't recall the original motion, or maybe it was there, but I don't recall the charrette including for the lease of a portion of John Phillips Memorial, but rather into a master plan. I think that there could be a perception with this particular motion that it's already a determined thing, that if this is strictly for the Lions. And I don't think that's what we want to put out in the community, because I don't think that it's true. I think that we need to be much more clear that the shred is actually to determine the usage ideally of the park and to inform the master plan. So I would like to see this motion amended if possible.
There's no motion on the floor yet. Council
Then
is
the
still
recommendation.
asking questions. So when that time comes, then a motion could be put forward, either this or something different altogether. Are there other questions? Councillor Logan's? Questions?
I guess I have one question, which is why do we not see the staff report and the Lions materials that was supplied to the Land Use and Development Committee in our agenda tonight?
Your worship, I believe this is the recommendation from the Land Use Development Committee, and so it was on its face a document that was presented. My understanding would have been that the council was familiar with the other material, but it, in retrospect, wouldn't have hurt to have it there.
Yeah, thank you. I did share the agenda with council, and I'm sure all of us had already found our way to it. It would have been good to see it in the public record, of course. So that's just a small oversight. And is there clarity in the Lions material? It speaks of I can find it. The center will be managed by a separate community society. So that I'm confused, and I was hoping at an open house to hear from the Lions about what they mean by that. Do you have any sense?
Such as yourself, yes, I believe the open house, the Lions, as part of their objective for informing the public, would share what that community society would look like. In many instances in other jurisdictions, typically that's a number of different community members coming together and forming this society to manage and operate the assets. So in this case, the center.
Now the question relates to the alternate approval process. So through you to Ms. Machada, if that process had garnered the 10%, would that have automatically triggered a referendum, or is that would have been council's call?
Yes, that would have been council's call to whether to proceed or stop the project at that point.
Any other questions? Okay, so there is a recommendation here I'll go to you, Councillor St. Pierre, as our liaison, if you wanted to move this or a different recommendation.
Slightly different recommendation. A lot of it's similar, but I'll
Go ahead.
suggesting that council will consider a charrette as a part of a public engagement process to develop a master plan for John Phillips Memorial.
We'll just wait till it's all up there and then we can look for a seconder. So it's there.
And I would remove for the lease of a portion of John Phillips Memorial Park to the Sooke Lions.
That's how you want that to read? Oh,
I-
we'll just wait till it's, okay. Does that reflect what you said?
Yeah, with two L's on Phillips, yeah.
That council consider a charrette as a part of a public engagement process leading to a master plan for John Phillips Memorial Park. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, speaking to it, go ahead, Councillor St. Pierre.
The charrette would allow us to actually engage the public in the same way that we had the Lot A charrette, which actually gave us, a reasonably good look at what the park might look like, some visuals. At that point, we'd actually have something that we could offer to the community, informed by the community, that would reflect the intent of what John Phillips could have in it in terms of usage. One of the things that came up very strongly was that the park was actually the covenant on it. It should be used for recreation purposes. So what sort of recreation purposes do we want in the park? Do those recreation purposes require a building? What sort of building? All that stuff should be ideally informed by the community with an idea of where things should go. Very similar to what happened in the 2006 process, but ideally that we can move forward on with partners. But I think it's important that we have some sort of a plan. Right now, we're really hampered by not having some strong visuals and something we can present to the community that really reflects what the community wants. It's far too vague at this point in time.
Okay, the seconder, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the Lions proposal is quite vague, and there are many other community groups.
Sorry, Councillor Lajeunesse, staff, it's really hard for me to focus because I can hear you as well. Go ahead, Councillor Lajeunesse.
Yeah, so I think there are many other community groups, volunteer organizations, arts groups, and others who are looking for community amenities as well. And I think that it would be good to involve the community as a whole and invite these different groups to have input into what we do in the park. And so I'll support this.
Other councillors? Go ahead, Councillor Logans.
This report was really confusing to me, but I do thank Councillor St. Pierre for clarifying every question you had was something I was going to ask. And I think that really helped me understand where this was going. So I just wanted to ask you, Councillor St. Pierre, the goal of this then would be to have a master plan that then informs what the community would like to see in the park and whether a building is or is not a piece of that, and move forward with that.
Absolutely. That was the intent of the committee.
Right. Okay. I think that will help answer a ton of questions in the community. It may seem to the Lions like this could be a step backwards, so we have to be ready to justify that. But it is really important to have a plan for the park prior to just throwing things into it, I think. So I do support it.
Okay, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I'm confused on this one. Now we have a situation where we have a scenario where the community is relatively split on whether there should be a structure within the park. We got 9.2% on the AAP. Two of our former mayors have come out against the project in that location. So my fear with a charrette, unlike Lot A, where we came together in this room and had that particular piece of land with a library already set for it and other community uses potentially going on it. Here, we're not really addressing the question of whether the community wants a structure in the park. So my feeling was that we need a referendum question on this. I think the referendum question could look like, does Sooke want the Sooke Lion Center vision as it exists? And it'd be a two-parter. And the second part would be, then the Sooke Lions would be a participant in a District of Sooke task force to be formed in the second quarter of 2023 and to report back. And that task force, we could state, would include several representatives from council, Parks and Environment Services Director Laura Hooper, 3 community representatives. I'm just winging here, but 1 community rep from Townsend Road, representatives from RB Foster, which is the owner of the new multi-use rental building in the former Mulligans, a representative from Aragon Properties, and that this group would then come together. But whether the Lions would be involved or not would be a matter for a referendum question. And then that task force would formulate, would be effectively this staff recommendation in this to do a master plan for John Phillips Memorial Park. Anyway, my fear is that the charrette will be a situation where we have a group of people here saying no, no, no to any sort of structure in the building, and then others saying yes, and it'll be just a bit of a gong show, at least initially, and it would have to be very skillfully facilitated.
Okay, so
those are my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. A couple of questions for me. Where is this in our budget? And is it in the budget for this year to do this work?
I don't believe that's in the work plan for this year for budgeting. This would be something moving forward with developing future work plans to set this aside for that master planning piece. What we're trying to identify is the fact that the Land Use and Development Committee was presented with information to help support at a time when we thought the open house was going to come forward earlier this summer, which we now know scheduling, that's not going to be possible as of right now, to provide information on what we could have through that engagement process as part of the Sooke Lions project. This conversation that happened during the end of the committee meeting looked at more of the park overall and how that related to what do people ultimately want to see in John Phillips Memorial Park. And that's how discussion surrounded about having a charrette, knowing more specifically what they want, and then roll that into a master plan. And that's where staff tonight brought forward an alternative motion, just kind of identifying that so that we could report back to the committee and say, your motion went forward to council. This was the motion that was considered by council, and this is how we're going to proceed with this. And we can still work with the Sooke Lions Club to determine when scheduling can occur to host that open house, because they still want to have that dialogue with the community. They still want to present their proposal and get feedback from the community as well. We are just a partner in that, given that we are the owners of the parkland. Their proposal includes public lands. And so we need to be part of that conversation, but it's their proposal leading that project, leading that engagement. And we're just clarifying some pieces specifically as the property owner.
No, and I appreciate that. However, we also ran an AAP and sent and spent and found the budget and did all the council deliberations and hosted council meetings in an open forum and did a whole AAP to run that. So we're kind of more than just a partner and the landholder, because we ran a whole public process in that time. My concern here is that we don't have this in our budget. So what are we not going to do? That's not clear to me. what capacity do we have? When do we intend to carry this out? Because there's nothing planned. I hear now there's no space available till the fall. So will it even fall into this term? In which case an incoming council could abandon it and put it a whole different way. And I don't see any members of the Lions Club here. So are they even aware that this conversation is happening? And I feel that they should be made known that, hey, by the way, this is coming to the, like, did they present at the land use committee? Were they aware that the item was on the agenda? Did they speak there? Did they have any input whatsoever? I think asking people to follow along and I know that we're improving on communications, but just to read newsletters about what's coming on the agenda and then decide whether or not to come forward and address us. And I know that some folks do, but in this case, this is someone that's been waiting for us to act. And then meanwhile, we're having a committee meeting, deliberate and give a recommendation of which they weren't aware of or a party to. Myself, I had to dig, and yes, the agendas are public and we find them. This goes back to April. That's where I found it. It wasn't part of tonight's agenda. So to Councillor Bateman's point, it should have been any time so that we're not all trying to find it and download other PDFs. And which meeting is it? Which meeting is it in? Because at some point with like Compass, they disappear completely. They're not easily found. So I'm struggling to support this. I get that it's part of what came out of the Parks and Trails Master Plan, but it's not in the budget and the Lions aren't involved. What if they don't want to participate anymore at all? Because they've waited for so long. We don't even know that because there's been no feedback. They've just been waiting for a date for an open house. We floated some around. They didn't work. Everything's gone quiet and they don't know anything. So for those reasons, I appreciate what everyone has said. I just feel that the main stakeholder, like if the public comes out and staff, can you please hold your voices down? I can hear you up here. They're not a party to it. They've been waiting for us and we haven't shared anything back. And so what if they want to abandon it completely? We don't know that. Where are they at with their membership and their plans? Because yes, COVID has disrupted all of the things that we want to do, but are they still interested? What if the public says, yes, we do want to come out and support that, and they're gone because they haven't been included? So I'm not supporting this. I'll leave it at that on all those reasons. Mr. Schaefer.
Your Worship, I take ownership of the lack of information from last year. I went back and read the other reports, but didn't occur to me to bring them forward. So that's on me. Given the discussions, the questions that you raised, that Councillor St. Pierre and Bateman raised, it might be a good idea to resolve instead of the recommendation that's been floated on the board to send this back to staff. We'll bring it back to you in 2 weeks with a more fulsome discussion of what's possible and rather than try to wing something tonight without sufficient information provided to council to do that.
Okay, so just maybe we can postpone, or this is where I always get confused and I should know this by now. Are we postpone to the next meeting or are we tabling to the next meeting? Postpone. So yeah, we can just, or we can postpone this or we can rescind it and just postpone. Pardon me? Okay, well, it postpones it. Yeah, so, and then this is where we have the meeting date. And I do urge you to reach out to the Sooke Lions Club and share the information, all of it from the Land Use Committee, the dates, so they can watch the webcast, as well as the information before us today and other answers to questions. Okay. So it's not, I'm looking just to postpone the motion, not the parts of it, right? So that council postpone consideration to June 13th. Okay, so. Okay, so council, yep, so moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by Councillor Logans. Any discussion on postponement? Seeing none, all in favor, And that's unanimous. Thank you. We could please have Councillor Bettles return to the room. Okay, we're on item 13, Councillor Remuneration and Benefits Bylaw number 845, 2022. So I have an odd question for staff, remuneration and benefits, because there's no, well, I guess for benefits, you pay into them voluntarily. So I'm like, there really isn't any benefits to council members. It's more that, right? It reads that you're entitled to remuneration and benefits, but it's only at your sole cost. So yeah, it just, anyway, it's a bit late to raise that, but could be deceptive, but anyway. Okay, the resolution is that council adopt the bylaw cited as council remuneration and benefits bylaw number 845, 2022. Moved by Councillor Bateman, seconded by St. Pierre. Any discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, election procedural bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we approach the 2022 municipal election, staff have reviewed the district's current election bylaw and are proposing changes in an effort to modernize the bylaw and improve processes. While not dramatically different in content, the proposed changes are sufficient enough to warrant an entirely new bylaw rather than an amendment. There are several items that must be included in an election bylaw should a municipality wish to authorize them. These include the use of a provincial voters list, use of electronic voting machines, establishing additional voting opportunities other than those that were legislated to provide, and certain parameters around required nominators, nomination deposits, and posting of nomination documents. The new bylaw does not reverse any previous direction related to these items. Should council support the new bylaw, the district will continue to use the provincial voters list as we have in the past. The district will continue to use electronic voting machines. However, some language updates have been included in the new bylaw to allow more freedom to use other types of machines rather than the specific models used in the past. Staff have a contract in place for this year's election to use machines that provides more feedback to voters regarding the acceptance of their ballots. And one of the things that we learned through the pandemic, I think just about every by-election that was held, they had to go to the minister to get a special permission to have their bylaw, or sorry, their by-election. So we've, one of the lessons learned is to remove those specifics that are in your election bylaw so that they're more generalized, so that they can apply in more circumstances and avoid the need for those ministerial orders in future. The district has historically held an additional advanced voting opportunity and will continue to do so. And no changes are proposed related to the nomination processes. Overall, the proposed changes are largely to provide clear direction to election staff for procedures not specifically detailed in the legislation, to remove outdated or confusing language, and to provide for process flexibility where needed. One significant change is the addition of a special voting opportunity at Eyre Manor. And should council have any questions on the context of the bylaw, I'm happy to answer them.
Sorry, did you say removal of the voting at Eyre Manor?
No, that's a new addition.
A new
Never
addition.
had special voting opportunities in the past. So it is a request that came in the 2018 election. So we reached out to them. They were still interested and have approximately 30 residents that are specifically identified in the bylaw for an opportunity to vote.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Questions? So otherwise there is no material changes on anything except to.
That's correct.
There was a concern in previous years that the printer at one time didn't print for a long time. So everyone was standing and staring at the poor staff waiting, but I'm not sure if that machine is even used anymore. That was in 2011.
You're talking about the screen that just says that your ballot has been received?
No, it was some device that printed off the results and it wasn't printing.
No, so we are moving away from the M100 machines that we have had in the past. And as noted, they're the machines that we are going to use provide a lot more feedback. I think, you know, there's been the comment in the past, people put it in and they're like, oh, into the shredder it goes. And it will actually say that your ballot has been received, your votes have been counted, those sorts of things. So it gives the voter a lot more feedback.
I think it was a dot matrix type, so. Okay, other questions from members of council? Okay, the recommendation is that council give first, second, and third reading to the election procedure bylaw number 841, 2022. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Item 14, there's no new business. So item 15, we have correspondence requiring action. So first up is 15.1, Sooke Sailing Association. We had our speakers earlier in the meeting and here we are. Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Beto since was the requester to extract.
Yeah, well, these two young gentlemen made my job a lot easier tonight, I say. I'm very in favor of helping this group out. One is they're going to represent Sooke in an event that is sort of what Sooke's all about, eh? We're right by the ocean, and having a sailing event and qualifying for the BC Summer Games, I just think is fantastic. And it's youth. We're always saying we want to reach out to youth and try and make things happen for them. So I'm happy to bring this forward. I don't think that I say much more other than I see Neil Gritzman of Sooke Home Hardware intends to match the District of Sooke's donation to a maximum of $5,000. Can I make a motion now? Okay, I would like to make a motion that the District of Sooke sponsor this group to the tune of $5,000.
Have you identified which budget?
We have a, how much is in our, I have to ask staff this, how much is our sponsorship budget?
Geez, your worship, through to Councillor Beddoes, in the sponsorship budget, we have $2,500 for the year, and we've spent $525 to date, so just under $2,000 in the sponsorship.
So I'd have to say it comes out of contingency fund.
So the motion is that the District of Sooke support the Sooke Sailing Association in the amount of $5,000 from the council contingency fund by Councillor Beddoes. That was seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse. Okay, anything further to add? Okay, Councillor Lajeunesse.
No, just always happy to support young leaders, and because you guys are going to be sitting here one day, hopefully.
Councillor St. Pierre.
Really happy that we can actually do some development on the waterfront that we could afford.
Any other councillors?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Unger in particular, because you ended with an ask, a clear ask, and that is something many delegations don't do. So thank you for doing that. I know you're only getting half what you requested, but it looks like you're working the community well, and I'm sure the money will all come together. Thank you.
Councillor Logans.
Yes, I am willing to support this motion. I just need to know a few things after the event, or before the event, actually, if those folks involved at Sooke Sailing could let us know. One would be what will be happening with the boat after the race. Is this something we'll be able to keep, or in the club, or in the association? I don't think it's a one-time use thing, but it would be great to know. Maybe if they can come present to us with the difference between this boat and the other ones that they're using. I also would like to know if there's a way for us to watch the event, whether it's live streamed or if it will be recorded, so that we can support you from afar. And I want the two of you and your families and friends to have fun.
Okay, thank you, council. So I am in support of this as well. I know that you came in for a $10,000 ask. However, we're achieving that both with this contribution, and I hope you go and visit Sooke Home Hardware tomorrow with a letter and, hey, council, resolve this. Please feel free to share that you're in receipt of these funds. It may help you attract others. There's also the Wanda Fuca. We have our we have an MLA and an MP that would also be very proud of you. So they may help direct you into other areas potentially. I'm not sure, but it never hurts to ask. You're doing a great job. I think just connecting young people with the water safety, independence, all of that is just fantastic. So certainly looking forward to hearing and reading about your success up there. You're learning in very dangerous waters here. So I think that's going to give you an advantage. I was at Fisgard Lighthouse today at Fort Rod Hill, and we were talking about just how challenging the waterways are out and about in this area. My son has started lessons at Sooke Sailing. So I know exactly when you're talking about where you're working from, but great deal of mentorship happening there, support from other youth. And this is kind of what it's all about, right? Is youth leading other youth and inspiring other children to connect with the water as well. So over the years, I've been aware of grants that have supported Sooke Sailing, and whether it was for different vessels or equipment or whatever. So it's just it's a fantastic opportunity. I think it's just outstanding on what you've achieved. Terrifying at times. Apparently there's a very large octopus living in our waters that comes up from time to time when kids are sailing. So you've managed to somehow overcome that large octopus in the water that I keep hearing about, just saying. And good for you. So that's fantastic. So have a wonderful time there. We're very proud of you. Good luck with the rest of your fundraising. Reach out to our local chamber as well. There's many other businesses and that would really like to see you succeed as well. So well done. Good for you. Thank you for being here. And I'm certain that if you're not in these chairs, you'll be doing other inspiring work in the community in the years to come. So if you do have a chance afterwards to come back and share any photos or highlights, it doesn't matter how you place. It's the fact that you're going, you're participating, you're representing our community. And if you have the opportunity to share any highlights, we'd love to have you back. Okay. It's a lot of work coming your way, but I get it. Summer too, so it's all good. Okay, so on that note, we'll call the question. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Good luck. Okay, next up is item 15.2, BC Hydro UBCM meeting request. So it's about that time where we'll start, you've probably already seen council, requests are coming in for us to, certain correspondence is coming in. And we have the ability to request meetings with partners like Hydro or other ministerial ministries and so forth. So given that this one came in first, I thought I would check in to see about Hydro and whether or not council is interested in meeting with Hydro, and if so, on what items. We still have a bit of time. Ms. Machada, it's June 17th, but we don't have meetings necessarily.
Yeah, the formal letter from the Premier and other, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs came in today. So those will be on the June 13th regular agenda. And the deadline for meeting requests is June 24th.
For all ministries. Yeah, okay. So for Hydro, thoughts, is there any items of concern from staff? Councillor St. Pierre?
One of my items of concern is that unlike certain other provinces, BC doesn't actually, through BC Hydro, have any sort of preferential pricing for any power that's produced by a local homeowner or anyone else. So for example, if my farm decided that we wanted to have our sheep sharing space with solar panels, which is really nice because it provides shade for the grass grows better, we grow some watts, we can't actually sell that power. So there's actually opportunities for local economic development. There's opportunities to make our community more resilient, and yet we can't actually access most of that stuff. It's funny, I would love to have Mr. Unker speak, but we happen to have an expert in the room. But
So I'm asking, rather than getting into all of the details, do we want to request the meeting? And if so, we just need to add a few bullets as to what it is under topic they asked to pose as a question. So that's where we could just develop that with staff. We're limited on how much to put in there, but more of what you're saying, we would prepare in advance of going into the meeting with Hydro. It's just right now I'm looking more, do we want the meeting? And if so, what are we asking for? So yes,
I would like a meeting.
Okay.
That's what I would be wanting to talk about.
okay. So one of them is, so we are requesting the meeting, and one of the topics of discussion is selling, because,
Better ability to sell power back into the grid.
okay, the ability to sell power back to the grid. The second one, we could just go ahead, Councillor Bateman.
Yeah, I attended a BC Hydro residential rate redesign workshop back in November. And that was looking at revisions to their two-tier pricing policy, because the current, anyway, I won't go in detail. I think that might be an interesting subject to learn more about. However, it's quite possible that their communications manager can provide us or me with what I need. I'm not sure I need to be in a meeting.
Well, if you don't have it by now, then I think we need to ask for it. And so that could be a second topic is.
Residential rate redesign.
Yeah. Chief Ryder?
If you're looking for topics for BC Hydro, line clearing, brush removal, fire smart initiatives.
That's a big one. So I appreciate that, Chief. And I would add that as topic number 3 is maintenance along the lines, fire smarting the lines. Yeah. Councillor St. Pierre?
She has reminded me of another issue that we might have, and that's that we're highly dependent on overhead power lines. And I do think that we're probably inevitably looking at a major wind event that would probably take out a good chunk of our overhead power lines. And what does that look like, and what sort of contingencies does BC Hydro have for us?
So we could probably tie that together as the third bullet.
I was just going to add to Councillor St. Pierre's is currently Hydro has a 1/3 funding program when we go into capital projects to fund 1/3 of the cost of putting their utility infrastructure underground. It ends up being one of the largest project costs. So to advocate for larger increase in funding that municipalities can access to underground hydro would fall in line with what Councillor St. Pierre is asking as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carter. So, because that sort of ties into that, is there a way for staff to capture that into 3 topic points? Because they're all very important. We have the selling, the ability to generate revenue or to feed back into the grid. The second one was on the rate structure, and also just to add on that is what relief is available from an affordability perspective, because it's expensive if that's where we're going. The third one is around fire smart, storm protection, and for us to advocate for a larger share of than just 30%. The federal government and provincial government already recognize that, and we're seeing that with the grants. So certainly Hydro can step up and follow that as well. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. We can work on this perhaps if you have the ability. I think council, once we know that, we'll write down for obviously the district of Sooke. We're all attending UBCM, I believe. Is that correct? I think so. So I would just write our council, our full council in there, the topics, the background, and to have me as the key contact. However, who actually goes into the meeting room will depend on what other meetings we get in the scheduling, because then we'll need to divide and conquer. And that's where we won't know that just yet. So we'll work on that. Okay, this gets it in. All good for staff? Okay. All right. What sort of a motion do you require that staff complete the form per council discussion? You've got it. Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. Okay, next item up, item 16, council verbal reports. Updates from members. Go ahead, Councillor Beddoes and St. Pierre.
Yeah, just bring to your attention that this Saturday at 11 o'clock, we'll be doing the official opening of the fitness center at Sea Park and have a little get together down there. The mayor will be attending and a number of dignitaries. A little belated, but we will get it in the public eye that it's operational. So that's 11 o'clock to 12:30 at Sea Park.
Thank you, Councillor Beddoes. Councillor St. Pierre.
I had a meeting of the land use committee. We discussed basically methods by which we could actually increase the amount of recycled materials and reused materials coming out of our demolition process. I think it was a good discussion and we will look forward to a report from staff on what that was all about. Meeting with the Crd Water Commission. Looks like we're in pretty good shape. Everything is topped up already. And so we're looking to move into the summer at this point in time.
Councillor Bateman.
So last week I attended a Wildwise Sooke Zoom meeting. Councillor Beddoes was there along with Wildwise's Sam Webb, who is a literal den mother now that she has a baby of her own. And our Jessica Boquist was also there. And a few things. One, a big reminder to, if in any way you can do so, please put your garbage curbside only on the morning of pickup. We don't have a bylaw to that effect, unlike Prince George, but ideally that will reduce habituation issues. Councillor Beddoes noted that he's seen a lot more bear cubs out and about. So this could, in the life cycle of things, this could be one of those years. And a new, Ms. Boquist mentioned cougars and wolves as an issue. Cougars in particular, their traditional diet of deer has quite likely been depleted by this new virus, the adenovirus, AHD. And as a result, we've seen these 5 reports of cougar attacks. And I think a wolf was involved in maybe 1 or 2 of them on pets in the Sooke and the Chosen area earlier this year. So Ms. Boquist noted that it's important to keep your dog leashed as often as possible when outdoors in these situations. I also, through the family court, I'm preparing an advocacy letter for the Mobile Youth Services team and the Pacific Center Family Services Crime Reduction and Education team. Now, you may have seen Constable McGee and Cred's Mia Golden on an episode of The Fifth Estate not so long ago, which was focused exclusively on vulnerable youth in the Greater Victoria region. Kids are getting into gangs, becoming addicted, living on the street, prostitution, sex trafficking. It's very grim out there. And these 2 are effectively on their own. So the family court is going to advocate with the Regional Governance Council for integrated police units for a minimum of at least 1 more of these street teams and plus additional funding and resources. And as we progress, this item will be in our correspondence package. And I attended the Sooke Housing Solutions Lab meeting. As that unfolds and progresses, these are trying to find affordable housing, very progressive solutions on Sooke land, while also recognizing that these solutions can be transported into the district of Sooke as well. So that's unfolding.
Councillor Logans. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just a few highlights today. The mayor's group met for lunch at Fisgard Lighthouse, hosted by Colwood. A bit of background is in the last term, the mayors would gather about every quarter or every 2 months and have lunch, and we would try to visit, split up, meeting all 13 municipalities within the term. This past term, though, we've been meeting every month, and during COVID, we were meeting twice weekly on Zoom sometime, and then every week, and then every 2 weeks, and then it sort of went to every month. So because we've been separated, we decided to gather for lunch. So Colwood hosted. They got an I Love Colwood mug. So I'll tweet that to Mayor Martin later. Learned a little bit about Fort Rod Hill and the lighthouse and its history. So that was quite interesting. And it was just nice to see everybody just to share a meal together and just to chat with one another. So that was a highlight for me today. I also, as I reported out the last time, was going to work the drive-through for McHappy Day, which I did for about an hour and a bit. Excellent crew there. So I just wanted to give a shout out and a thanks to all of the frontline folks that work in our fast food restaurants, our grocery stores that are doing all these shifts. Some of them start at 4 a.m. And work long days. They are understaffed, and in some cases they put up with a lot of verbal abuse. They're just getting someone a coffee, really. And they're an important part of our community, certainly found a way to pivot through COVID. I know everyone doesn't like fast food, but when everyone was shut and people just wanted a coffee, it was the one place to go. But behind all of that, there's just really hardworking people there that are just trying to make a living and do a fantastic job. So a few interesting looks at the drive-through. It was an interesting morning anyway, but I just wanted to thank everyone there. The CRD's Planning and Protective Services Committee met to review our regional context statement with the regional growth context strategy, but I have them both mixed up, but that came to that committee. It was the only item on the agenda, and the meeting was finished in 5 minutes. And that included approval of the agenda, the minutes, the discussion, everything. And I think it'll then roll forward to the board, likely as part of the consent agenda. But there is what I see, just sort of an informal respect that every local government has its autonomy. It fits in the regional context, and let's sort of respect that. We all don't want to go wading into everyone else's OCPs, really. June 22nd, the CRD First Nations Committee, of which I chair, we're looking to do something a bit different, and that is to do some showcasing on local initiatives. So both myself and Chief Planis have been invited to speak together on various items that we've been working on. So whether or not it goes ahead, there's still some details that need to be worked out. Victoria will also be involved. So we're just waiting to see if all those pieces can come together for the 22nd. Some more on that to come. And lastly, I just want to close by just thanking the community for their support of what is happening in the Ukraine. We're seeing sunflowers and colors emerge throughout our community. And every week now we're hearing of families that have opened their hearts and doors to bring folks in from the Ukraine to help them get settled and to find support here. So I'm not certain how many are in our community. I don't think we keep a registry of who's who. We're all welcome here. We all belong. But I know there's a lot of others that are doing quiet things to support, and those that we read more about. So I just wish to acknowledge and thank for the care and support. It's just horrific of what's unfolding there and what keeps going. But yeah, I think it just really shows how caring Sooke is. We're worlds apart, but community is always willing to step up as needed. So these are our peers, deputy mayors, aldermen, councillors out there that are still trying to keep their communities strong and resilient. And imagine if we were in that circumstance, how challenging that would be. Who's deputy mayor right now? No, I'm kidding. It's a tough time. It's hard to read about, but it's certainly there. And also wish to acknowledge, I met one of our new recruits today, actually at Sea Park. Someone that was new to the community, wanted to step up and get involved, and is now with our fire department. So again, it's tough times in beyond the pandemic. There's a housing affordability problem, and the opioid crisis is really taking its toll on people, our neighbors, our friends, people we know. So it's tough. So just hang together, be strong, and thank you, everyone. So on that note, I'll look for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor St. Pierre, seconded by Councillor Lajeunesse.